What a year it has been for gaming. We got a ton of great games, some not so great, plenty of memories and friends we made along the way, kinda. If you don't know me, I go by Adroid, and every week on TikTok, maybe you've heard me say this. Here are all the missing games. So instead of doing the week in gaming, consider this to be my complete 2025 retrospective. We're gonna go through all of the big headlines so you can either relive or learn about something that happened in the gaming industry this year. I'll be honest, I might miss some things and we'll skip over general game releases, but the goal of this is to hopefully leave you armed with information. Let's get right into it. January started off very fun with the CES Switch 2 leaks from Genki, who were on the show floor displaying renders and accessories to the not yet announced Switch 2. Later in the month, we do get the official reveal of the Switch 2 and a new Mario Kart game, so Genki jumped the gun quite a bit and Nintendo was all over them in a lawsuit was, yes, filed later on. Over on the Xbox side of things, which we will hear a lot about this year, Microsoft reportedly turned down a secret level Doom Halo collab, which would have been sick to see initially, but maybe it will still happen in a second season of the Amazon Prime show. We also hear more about the woes of the Xbox Series S in relation to the not yet released Black Myth Wukong on the platform. The director of the game said it was because of the limited memory of the Series S that limited the game from releasing on the platform, but reports and insiders claimed it was actually due to an exclusivity deal with PlayStation. Funny enough, the game does release eventually on Xbox Series consoles this year, exactly 1 year after its initial launch in August. If there was an exclusivity deal, it doesn't seem like it was made publicly official. Following this, Phil Spencer doubled down on keeping the Xbox Series S compatibility for releasing games on the platform. And in January, more rumors of Xbox games coming to other platforms start to ramp up, namely with Gears of War and Halo, which kind of came true later on in the year, which is just kind of wild to be saying. And that is only more fueled by Forza getting a PlayStation release announcement later this month. Something we actually see a lot within 2025 are the crossovers between gaming and television and movies. Kojima's Death Stranding 2, Fizzant, and OD were all impacted by the SAG-AFTRA strike last year, with him not being able to record anything with any of the actors. Andy Muschietti's Shadow of the Colossus film is apparently still alive, or so he says. The Sleeping Dogs movie with Donnie Yen is announced to be reportedly canceled, but by the end of the month, Simu Liu is in talks to pick up the rights, which he has a script draft in hand by October. After a success of the third outing, a fourth Sonic movie gets a 2027 release date. Elliot Page's production company gets the rights to adapt Beyond Two Souls for television. A bidding war erupts over Zach Kreger's Resident Evil movie, which was announced seemingly because everyone knew Weapons would be a banger, and it was, but I still like Barbarian a little bit more though. There's also a hefty amount of games getting canceled this year. The Transformers Reactivate from Splash Damage, announced back at the Game Awards in 2022, is announced to be canceled. PlayStation cancels 2 live service games in January, and we'll hear more about their live service endeavors later on this year. One of these 2 games was reportedly a God of War live service game from Bluepoint, which there are screenshots out there now of, and the other one is from Ben's studio. Side note, one of the purveyors of live service at PlayStation was Jim Ryan, who left the company and had his replacements named in January. And Dr. Disrespect's Midnight Society canceled their game and shut down following all of his controversy being unearthed in 2024. Multiversus, the WB IP platform fighter, announces that it will be shutting down in May after not retaining player count and making any money. I really wanted this game to be fun, but with an emphasis on teams and very floaty combat, I just couldn't get into it as a former Smash player myself. One cancellation that really struck a chord for me was for Earthblade, the next game from Extremely OK Games, following up from Celeste, one of my favorite indie titles ever. The leads apparently disbanded due to disputes over the Celeste IP. Godfall developers Counterplay Games was supposedly disbanded in early 2025, but then it was announced to be alive with Armistice later on in this year. We knew it was going to be a big year for Ninja Gaiden, with Ragebound announced the last month in 2024, but only confirmed to be a 3-game year for Ninja Gaiden in January during Xbox's Developer Direct, where Ninja Gaiden Black 2 shadow dropped and Ninja Gaiden 4 was announced for later on in the year. EA Origin announced that it was shutting down in April, which the only reason I had it was to originally play Apex. PSN requirements were dropped from PC games. EA announced that last year's Dragon Age the Veilguard missed the mark and that downsizing was going to happen before starting up again to go into production on Mass Effect 5. And Dino Crisis got some love for the first time in a minute and a half with some GOG ports. back to some Veilguard news, EA CEO said the game should have kept the live service aspect in. What? WB Games had a moment in the news where we heard that things were not looking great. First, from Jason Schreier at Bloomberg, we learned that Wonder Woman was in trouble, and then later on in the month, the game and the studio are shut down. Obviously, any studio closing sucks, but also the Wonder Woman game was supposed to feature the return of the Nemesis system from the Lord of the Rings Shadow games, which is one of the coolest mechanics that we've had in gaming in recent history. Why haven't we gotten more games using this mechanic, you may be asking? Because it's trademarked. On top of that, we learned Rocksteady was working on a new Batman game, at least at some point. We then learned in March that WB Games San Diego, which was shut down, was working on a Mario Kart-like game with Warner Brothers IP, so like Multiversus but a kart racer. Also, WB Games Montreal canceled a Flash game due to the movie's poor reception. The CEO of Take-Two said GTA 6 was still on track for a fall 2025 release in February. Hi-Rez Studios announced shutdowns of several of their live service games like Smite 1, Paladins, and Rogue Company to focus on Smite 2. More Xbox, Microsoft games get announced for a PS5, namely Age of Mythology Retold and Age of Empires Definitive Edition, both in February. The creators of E3 announced Icon starting in 2026. It's a much more internal, invite-only industry event, so don't expect a bunch of public-facing press conferences like we were getting with E3. That now belongs to Jeff Keighley. There was a PlayStation State of Play where we got a ton of reveals, namely Sorrows from Housemarque promising to take the gameplay loop from Returnal to the next level, the spectacle action game Tides of Annihilation featuring Jennifer English of both Mael and Shadowheart fame was announced, and Mind's Eye. Overwatch 2's big spotlight stream happened in February, detailing a lot of the changes coming to the game, including bans and picks, changes, new heroes, and the stadium mode, which honestly is pretty fun. In my opinion, they've done a whole lot to really bounce back. Ubisoft is going to focus on live service games and open world games, they announce, which tracks because in February, Rainbow Six Siege X, the next evolution of the game, was announced with a full showcase happening the next month in March. The game then fully releases in June. We heard that the Final Fantasy IX and Tactics remake were still in development, which we did end up getting one of those in September, and it's not Final Fantasy IX. Dark and Darker was cleared of copyright infringement from Nexon, but they were ordered to pay the publisher almost $6 million. Oof. Crytek announced layoffs of about 15% of the company, and Crysis 4 was put on hold. Microsoft announced their AI tool Muse to help with game development, but to also help preserve games so that remain playable, which leaves me very conflicted, but I'll tell you what, if anything, I am pro game conservation. And last, Pokemon Go developer Niantic was rumored to be selling to Savvy Games Group, which is a Saudi-owned company. And that turned out to be true a few weeks later in March for over $3 billion. The tactical shooter Spectre Divide announced that they were shutting down due to low player numbers and revenue, where they had just started their first official rollout of seasons and release on consoles. We got the first kind of rumor of Xbox working on a branded Xbox handheld, which we now know to be the ROG Ally and Ally X, which released a few months later in October. Space Marine 3 was officially announced to begin development. The Star Wars hero shooter that no one played, Hunters, was announced to be shutting down. But BitReactor and Respawn announced that they are working on a new Star Wars tactical game, revealed to be Zero Company at Star Wars Celebration later on this year. In March, we heard about Ubisoft considering new investors to help co-own and drive on their biggest franchises, and a few weeks later, that is announced to be true with a $1 billion investment from Tencent. Silent Hill F gets an official re-reveal trailer dropped in March as marketing starts to roll out for the game release in September. Fueling the Dino Crisis fire, the series got its trademark renewed in March by Capcom, but no, nothing has stemmed from that yet. BlizzCon was announced to return in 2026, where it'll be nearly 3 years since their last one in 2023. People Can Fly and Sony announced that they are working on a new IP, which could either be a new one or one that Sony already has under their belt. In March, we first hear of the rumored God of War side project, which is said to be later a 2.5D Metroidvania from known insider Jeff Grubb, but it did not release this year. Let me tell you what, if it's anything like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, we might be in business. Video game workers launched an industry-wide union with CWA across many developers. Just 6 days before the Switch 2 Direct is set to air, we get a Nintendo Direct dedicated to the Switch 1, but we didn't get any crazy announcements. And last in March, Game Informer makes its return. We got the official look at the Switch 2 in early April in a Direct, which included the pricing at $450 and $500 depending on the bundle with or without Mario Kart World. Enhanced editions for Switch 1 games for better performance and features were announced. GameCube is coming to Nintendo Switch Online for the Switch 2. And yeah, of course, there were a lot of games that were announced, like the official reveal of Mario Kart World as a launch title featuring open world driving, grinding, and more. Donkey Kong Bonanza, which immediately I said this has got to be the Super Mario Odyssey team behind this, which kind of gets confirmed later on. Sakurai is back to make a new Kirby Air Riders. From Software announces that they're working on a new PvPvE game called the Duskbloods, which close enough, welcome back Bloodborne. And Silksong got a short little glimpse with a confirmation to be alive with a 2025 release window. 2 days after the reveal, Nintendo then halted Switch 2 pre-orders due to the tariffs in the US potentially shifting their prices, which about a week after that, they announced the prices wouldn't be impacted for at least the consoles themselves, but some of the peripherals would go up in price. Pre-orders then went live in late April after the delay. I did get to go to the Switch 2 event and felt mostly just whelmed by the experience. Nothing really blew me away, but I think that was everyone's kind of realization, and I did get my pre-order a few weeks later. Bungie officially reveals Marathon in April during a broadcast and announced a September release date, going up originally against Borderlands 4 on September 23rd, and a playtest was announced to be happening soon. But by the end of the month, Borderlands 4 moves up about a week, so they're no longer competing. Amidst The Last of Us trucking along with Season 2, which I stopped watching about halfway through, we did get another way to buy The Last of Us games in The Last of Us Complete, which just comes with Part 1 and Part 2 bundled together. The long-rumored Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion remake got leaked ahead of schedule and then officially revealed in the last days of April, shadow dropping. We also get the release date for Ghost of Yotei in April, set for October 2nd. Palworld begins to fight back against Nintendo, citing some other games that also infringe upon the same patents that Nintendo is putting up against Palworld. There's also quite a bit of gaming movie news this month. The Minecraft movie absolutely dominated at the box office with a $157 million opening weekend. Michael Sarnowski, the director of A Quiet Place Day One, was announced to be the director of the A24 Death Stranding adaptation. Personally, I think A Quiet Place Day One was pretty weak, and I love Death Stranding. I'm still holding out. An Outrun racing movie was announced to be in development from Sydney Sweeney and Michael Bay. And speaking of Sydney Sweeney, she is reportedly attached to a split fiction movie from John M. Chu, who most recently did the Wicked movies. Remember when the CEO of Take-Two said GTA was on track? Lies! It was pushed back to May 2026. Boy, I sure hope it doesn't get delayed again, but at least we get a second trailer for the game. Microsoft announced a global price increase for the Series X and S, which will not be the first time. In September, they announced yet another price increase. We also learned that in October, there was a report that Microsoft is holding Xbox to a higher profit margin, which is probably definitely related for all the price increases we see this year. Also, Microsoft holds pretty sizable layoffs. 3% of employees, over 6,000 were let go, which unfortunately this will also not be the only time this happens. With the official announcement of Gears of War Reloaded releasing on August 26, we learned that it was in fact coming to PS5, which I couldn't imagine trying to wall bounce on a DualShock DualSense, whatever. But I haven't tried it yet. Thanks to Tony Hawk stepping in, Bam Margera is confirmed to officially return in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. And Tony Hawk himself said he's going to campaign as much as he can for a remaster of Tony Hawk's Underground games, which are, in my opinion, some of the best in the series. The Kingdom Hearts mobile game Missing Link was canceled, which as a Kingdom Hearts fan myself, I didn't really care for, but it still sucks to see it be canceled. But in light of that, we did get a new look at Kingdom Hearts 4 finally, which I'm gonna be honest, the lack of lighting and details here makes me think this game is still a few years away. As Death Stranding 2 previews begin to roll out, Kojima said that he wished the game was a bit more controversial with test audiences. He also said he has a USB stick of ideas for games he wants to be made after he dies. After just revealing the game the previous month and with a closed alpha happening, the woes of Marathon really start to happen this month. Not only is the game not getting the best word of mouth reviews, but artist Fern Hook, aka Anti-Real, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, releases a statement detailing the assets found within the game that are directly ripped from their work in 2017. Bungie pretty much says, yep, they're right, and begin work on reviewing all the assets in the game and fire that artist who was responsible for lifting them. What's worse is that they had a weekly stream still scheduled and chose to still host it, but without any gameplay. And if you've seen it, you can just see the defeat in the team's eyes. The next month in June, Bungie will announce that Marathon will not be releasing this September and delayed indefinitely. Neil Druckmann is said to be teaching Tati Gabrielle about harassment she may or probably will face when Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet releases. Mortal Kombat 1 gets a definitive edition. It's confirmed about a week later that no new characters or story chapters are coming to the game when it was said to have years of content still to come. EA announces that they are canceling their Black Panther game and closing down the studio Cliffhanger Games. We come to find out later this week that the game would have featured different Black Panthers for you to play as, fighting against a Skrull army, and supposedly the next evolution of the Nemesis system was built for the game. Cyberpunk 2 officially enters pre-production at CD Projekt Red. The Overwatch development team at Blizzard unionizes by joining CWA. Just nearly a year after launching, Call of Duty Warzone Mobile announced that they will be shutting down and delisting. We begin to hear rumors that Naughty Dog is working on a second game being produced by Neil Druckmann other than Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet. Randy Pitchford, after being asked if Borderlands 4 will be $80, said that real fans will find a way to pay for it. It was announced that Alex Garland will direct the Elden Ring movie for A24, and apparently he's beaten it a few times, so maybe it's in good hands. I trust him. Although it feels like forever ago, the FTC dropped their case against Microsoft over the Activision Blizzard acquisition. SAG-AFTRA hit Fortnite with an unfair labor practice complaint due to the AI Darth Vader that was put in the game, which not only were players making him say just kind of ridiculous, uncensored things, but mostly for taking away from actors with AI work. And last in May, there is a huge upswing for Battlefront 2. First, some of the devs say that they want to get the band back together for a third entry in the series, and that energy is met with a huge player count number boost on Steam, only propelled by a sale across all digital platforms on the game. People Can Fly announced that 2 projects were shut down and layoffs were coming to the studio, but it doesn't seem like that had anything to do with the Sony deal that was struck back in March. Although The Witcher 4 was pretty much absent throughout all of the year, we did see an Unreal Engine 5 tech demo, and yes, it does look amazing. Blumhouse is working on a Phasmophobia film. One Death Stranding anime adaptation was announced in addition to the live action movie, and another anime, not a direct adaptation, but set in the world of Death Stranding, gets announced later in the year. And another animated film was also announced, written by the Raised by Wolves writer Aaron Guzikowski. That's a whole lot of Death Stranding. PlayStation held probably their biggest state of play of the year. Earlier in the year, there were reports that for their summer presentation, they didn't know if it should be a state of play or a PlayStation showcase, which the latter is usually reserved for their bigger showcases from games from their first-party studios. But I'm gonna be honest, I thought this one was pretty good. Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls from Arc System Works gets announced. It's a new Marvel Tag Team Fighter out next year. We get the first look at gameplay from 007 First Light from IO Interactive, the team behind the Hitman games. Neo 3 gets officially announced for 2026 and a demo is released. Pragmata is confirmed to be alive after all this time, and we get to see some gameplay. We get the release date and see more of the action inside Silent Hill F. Suda51 is back with a new third-person action game called Romeo is a Dead Man with a 2026 release date. Baby Steps gets a new release date for this year, but that changes come late August due to another big indie game. Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster: The Ivalice Chronicles is announced, which is that remaster remake of Tactics that we've been hearing rumors about for so long. If anything, I actually think Summer Game Fest had a really great showing of all the presentations this year. Resident Evil Requiem is officially announced. Stranger Than Heaven is officially announced from RGG following a teaser from the Game Awards in 2024. Arc Raiders gets an official release date. Lies of P's DLC is released. Mundfish announces Atomic Heart 2 and an MMO FPS called The Cube. Marvel Cosmic Invasion, the beat 'em up, is announced. We're getting 2 LEGO games, Party and Voyagers. The lead singer of Imagine Dragons is making a Capture the Flag game. And Ill looks disgusting, and it's definitely one of my most anticipated games. Also, that Splitgate 2 stunt with the Make FPS Great Again. Yeesh. I kind of get it though. The game was struggling to find players, and unfortunately layoffs were announced shortly after this stunt. Then we get the Xbox showcase. Black Ops 7 is announced. Silksong was confirmed in 2025 again as part of the ROG Xbox Ally commercial. Obsidian is having an absolutely wild 2025 with Avowed earlier in the year, and then Outer Worlds 2 and Grounded 2 get 2025 release dates. The Persona 4 Remake Revival is officially announced. Game Freak is making a Souls-like called Beast of Reincarnation. Clockwork Revolution looks like Fallout Steampunk. And apparently a lot more is coming in 2026 to celebrate 25 years of Xbox. Following the Outer Worlds 2 official reveal and deep dive at the Xbox Game Showcase, it's revealed that the game is going to be Microsoft's first priced game at $80. Oh, amongst all of these presentations and announcements, Mind's Eye releases, and yeah, it's not great. Refunds are being issued, content creators are getting their sponsorships pulled by the game before they can even do their deliverables. It's real bad, and then there are layoffs at the studio. Bend Studio announces layoffs after the live service game that they were working on is canceled. The almost year-long SAG-AFTRA video game strike was suspended. Following the success of the Silent Hill 2 remake last year, Bloober Team and Konami announced that a Silent Hill 1 remake is in the works, which I think this is the first time a sequel is being remade before the original. If that's correct, or if I'm wrong, please let me know. PC region locking was finally removed for PlayStation games on PC, like with Helldivers 2, which it was unavailable in other regions that did not have PSN, even though that requirement was removed earlier in the year. We got the first look at the gameplay for the upcoming RPG Blood of the Dawnwalker from former developers of The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077. Also in the pricing world, then Borderlands 4 announces that it will not be $80, despite Randy Pitchford saying that fans will find a way to pay for it just a few weeks back. Xbox and AMD announced a partnership for the next generation of consoles, which I can't believe we're already talking about the next generation of consoles. Following all the reports on Warner Brothers games earlier in the year, it was reported in June that the teams will restructure to focus on 4 properties: Mortal Kombat, Harry Potter, the DC Universe, and Game of Thrones. Nexus Mods owner Dark One sells the site, citing burnout as a main factor. And last, in late June, Riot announces that Hytale and Hypixel are being shut down, but this won't be the last we hear of the game, as the original founders come together to try and regain the rights. Alright, we're halfway through the year. Certainly things don't get more crazy, right? Microsoft lays off over 9,000 employees, and studios are closed down and games are canceled. Rare's long in development Everwild is officially canceled, and the director of Banjo-Kazooie and Sea of Thieves, Greg Mayles, is announced to be leaving the studio. The Perfect Dark reboot is canceled, and the studio The Initiative closes down. ZeniMax cancels a new MMO following The Elder Scrolls Online. Reportedly, nearly half of Turn 10 was laid off, and Forza Motorsport is put on hold. Romero Games from John Romero, the co-creator of Doom, lost their funding, and their unannounced game was put on hold for about a week, and then it was announced that new publishers were in contact with them to help finish the game. This is definitely one of the more wild things to have happened. Neil Druckmann announces that he is stepping away from the Last of Us TV show to refocus back on Naughty Dog and game development. Techland reportedly cancels 2 games, one of which was a fantasy RPG announced in 2022. Helldivers 2 was announced to finally come to Xbox on August 26th, the same day as Gears of War launching, which is also coming to PS5, so that's a fun little change up there. BioWare's Anthem is pulled from stores, and it will be officially not playable come January 12th. We do learn that the Mario Odyssey team did in fact work on Donkey Kong Bonanza. 2K Sports announces that a college basketball game is coming just one day after EA also announced a college basketball game is in the works, so I guess it's just a race to the finish line now. The Last of Us Part 2 got a new update with a new way to play the game in chronological mode. Subnautica 2 drama really begins to unfold this month as we learn about the power struggle going on between the execs at Unknown Worlds and the publisher Krafton. The leads of Unknown World announced that they were leaving seemingly out of nowhere, and this was all apparently right before a $250 million payout was supposedly supposed to be going to the dev team. We're still hearing to this day of the ongoing legal dispute going on between them. Early access for the game has been pushed to 2026. Another former Xbox exclusive game, Stalker 2, is announced to be coming to PS5, eventually getting a release date of November 20th. Need for Speed at EA has been shelved for the time being, it's announced. There was a Nintendo partner showcase which included the announcements of Octopath Traveler 0, The Adventures of Elliot, an almost HD 2D Zelda-like from Team Asano, Monster Hunter Stories 3, and more. The Legend of Zelda movie announced their cast for Zelda and Link, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, and Bo Bragazin. We heard rumors that another unannounced From Software titles in the works other than the Duskbloods. Virtuous Studio, the co-development team that worked on both the Oblivion and Metal Gear Solid remasters, announces layoffs. Stepping in here to re-record a segment about Valve pulling not safe for work titles from Steam. Valve pulls a ton of not safe for work titles from Steam following pressure from credit card companies that they work with to do so. Valve says yes, they were pressured by credit card companies, and then credit card companies say no, that's not actually true, but Valve upholds it and say, yeah, no, we definitely heard that you guys wanted us to change some of our rules, so we did. This whole thing seems to be quite a struggle, and it's never made exactly clear who's at fault here, but you know, make up your own mind. Decide how you want to spend your money. A live-action Assassin's Creed TV series is announced to be in the works at Netflix. After a rough launch, Splitgate 2 announced that they were returning back to beta and taking the game offline. Microsoft retracted back on $80 priced games, and The Outer Worlds 2 was announced to go back to $70. Ubisoft said that adding microtransaction in a game helps make the game more fun, but also that they want to respect player experience. Battlefield 6 is officially announced, and we get a beta starting just in a few weeks in early August. During this announcement time, EA said that they don't have any plans to launch $80 price games, which I guess that's nice. Supermassive Games announced that layoffs would be coming to the company soon and that the upcoming sci-fi game Directive 8020 is delayed. And last, Sony filed a lawsuit against Tencent's Light of Motorim, an almost too identical clone to the Horizon franchise. In August, BioShock 4 reportedly fails an internal review at 2K Games, and development is announced to be restructured. The following week, the CEO said that it will eventually come out, just without saying when it will release. By the end of the month, layoffs were announced at Cloud Chamber, and Rod Ferguson was announced to be now heading up the studio after leaving Diablo. To note, he was also brought in to help finish BioShock Infinite all the way back in the 2010s. A price increase of the Switch 1 is announced in both Canada and the US. Darksiders 4 is officially announced at a THQ Nordic digital presentation along with a ton of other games. Sony's CFO stated that the live service push the company was once focusing on is not going smoothly, we know this. Fortnite added Power Rangers, which is important to me personally. Yeah! Xbox cancels Contraband, the game announced in 2021 from the Just Cause developers Avalanche Studios. EA said that they don't want to do a trilogy remaster of the Dragon Age games like they did for Mass Effect, but even the developers themselves wanted to do it. Former Guitar Hero veterans create a new studio, Red Octane Games, named after the original publisher of the first game in the series, with plans to focus on both new hardware and new titles. Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, a Souls-like that released the previous month, had some changes patched into the game in August that changed certain interactions and scenes, making certain bosses not able to die. This was apparently due to criticism the game drew from Chinese audiences. The state of Louisiana is suing Roblox over child safety. Gamescom opening night live from Jeff himself was a banger presentation in my opinion. Black Myth's Zhong Kui was announced to be now in development. Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight was officially revealed, and it is now one of my most anticipated games for next year. First-person Souls-like Valor Mortis from the Ghost Runner development team was announced. A Sekiro anime called No Defeat is announced, and Silksong is confirmed to be 100% launching this year at Gamescom, and the official reveal happens just a few days later on August 21st, with a September 4th release date. That week, when Silksong announced their release date, several indie games moved their release date either a few weeks or months later to not be competing with them. We also get the long-awaited release date for the Skate reboot just a few days later, with a September 16th early access date. When Helldivers 2 releases on Xbox, it also comes with a Halo ODST collab, which fits just oh so perfectly. PS5 got a price increase in the US following tariffs and other platforms raising their prices. Crystal Dynamics announced another round of layoffs for the year, and another round will happen in November just before the Game Awards, which is a pretty big moment for them, announcing 2 games. Reports start swirling about a PS6 handheld version. Can we not already be talking about the next consoles? In late August, Call of Duty announced some big changes coming to Black Ops 7. First, that the kind of ridiculous skins that had been becoming more of a standard, like Beavis and Butthead and Seth Rogen, and more, would not transfer over, and the new bundles will be more grounded. Also, it's revealed later on that skill-based matchmaking will be tuned down way less. And last, just 2 months before it was released, the Mortal Kombat 2 movie is delayed until May of next year. When Hollow Knight Silksong finally releases, it absolutely destroys eShop servers and brought down Steam itself. The player count goes to show that this was an absolutely insane launch, which makes sense. It was only $20 and my god did I get my money's worth. September in general was a pretty big deal for indie games, not only with Silksong releasing, a ton of other indie games moving out of that window, but also in the middle of the month we hear of another big indie game getting a release date also in September. It's Hades 2, getting a full 1.0 release and coming to the Switch 1 and Switch 2. Take-Two was reportedly in talks to save Xbox's Perfect Dark reboot, but the deal fell through. Sophie Turner is announced to star as Lara Croft in the upcoming Prime Tomb Raider show. A Life is Strange show was also announced to be coming to Prime as well. In September, we had a new Nintendo Direct, in which we first heard of the Super Mario movie sequel Galaxy getting an official title reveal, with Galaxy 2 coming to the Switch the following month. A new Yoshi, Mario Tennis, Fire Emblem, Pokemon Life Sim, farm game Pokopia, and more were all announced for 2026, and we finally get the release date for Metroid Prime 4 in December. While it wasn't in the Direct, I also want to give a shout out to Mega Man Star Force, which is getting its own Legacy collection. Those games were super difficult, but I'm glad that they're getting some recognition at least. The fighting game tournament EVO gets bought out by the Saudi Arabian government. Nintendo won a $2 million lawsuit against a MiG Switch distributor. Coming back to the Pal World versus Pokemon legal debacle, in September, the Pokemon Company and Nintendo secured a patent in the US on specifically summoning characters from a ball to fight for you. Later next month, Nintendo is denied a patent in Japan under the capturing mechanic angle. Also, mind you, Pal World is still in early access this entire time. They only just announced in September that 1.0 is coming in 2026. The team behind Bomb Rush Cyberpunk announced their next game, Hyperfunk. Towards the end of the month, we get a pretty big state of play from Sony too. Wolverine from Insomniac, after so many years out of the spotlight, is finally shown off with gameplay and a release window of fall 2026. Deus Ex Remastered was announced, but after its reveal, fans immediately were calling it odd looking. In December, Aspyr announced that it'll be indefinitely delayed to address the feedback. One of my now most anticipated games coming out next year is called Chronoscript, which was announced here. We also got another gameplay look at Saros, which was announced for March 20th, but it actually got an April release date in December at the Game Awards. We also got a presentation from Kojima Productions to announce more of what they're working on post Death Stranding 2. The horror game OD is now called OD Knock, which we get our first look at the gameplay for. We got the first poster for Physint, the action stealth game and sort of spiritual successor to Metal Gear Solid, which I think that looks a lot like Robert Pattinson. Also, we got a look at Death Stranding Mosquito, one of the animated movies in development. Due to the Peacemaker show, for a little bit, Fortnite pulled a dance emote that could have been referencing Nazis that were in the show. And in late September, we learned that EA had entered into talks with Saudi's Public Investment Fund and other hedge funds to own them at a value of over $50 billion. While they stated later in November that they will keep creative control, obviously there's a lot of red flags about the new ownership. Plenty of creators and fans that I know of, like within the Sims space for example, are stepping away from that whole relationship and game series. Also at the end of September, Nintendo of America CEO Doug Bowser announced that he will be stepping down. Strap in, we've made it to the last quarter of the year. At the beginning of the month, Xbox Game Pass announces a price increase of 50%, now costing upwards of $30 per month for the highest tier, which is pretty substantial. I guess it does come with Ubisoft Classics and Fortnite Festival, but still, that's a lot of money for games that you don't own. Elon Musk stated that his XAI game studio will release an AI-generated game by the end of 2026, which I already know is going to just be absolutely appalling to the eyes. We learned of a post-Civil War Assassin's Creed game that was canceled at Ubisoft because it was too controversial. Honestly, I think that sounds kind of sick. Probably one of my biggest disappointments this year was the indie game Hyper Light Breaker, because I loved Hyper Light Drifter, but it just sadly missed the mark. Unfortunately, the studio Heart Machine announced that in October, the development of the game is winding down, and unfortunately, the studio will be facing layoffs. The studio behind Metal Hellsinger, The Outsiders, was announced to be shutting down. Starbreeze behind Payday canceled their Dungeons & Dragons game and announced layoffs as well. It was set to launch at the end of the month, but Yacht Club Games, the studio behind Shovel Knight, announced that their next game, Mina the Hollower, is indefinitely delayed. We later hear in November that the studio is in a make or break it state, and that Mina the Hollower needs to absolutely smash for the studio to remain open. An Avatar: The Last Airbender fighting game is announced. Pokemon suffers a huge leak in the middle of October, pretty much detailing and showing off games development all the way up until 2030. If I were to show them here, my account in my house would get swarmed by Nintendo lawyers. There was also a lot of misinformation going on within October about retail stores like Target and Walmart pulling Xbox consoles from shelves, which wasn't necessarily true. But to be honest, I'm just sad that we don't have the console aisles like we used to, where you would get neck pain like a real gamer. Quantic Dream made a reappearance since announcing in 2022 Star Wars Eclipse, but it wasn't to show off Star Wars Eclipse, but instead Spellcasters Chronicles, a 3v3 MOBA-esque PvP game. Following the subsidiary formed between Ubisoft and Tencent a few months ago, the head of Assassin's Creed, Mark Alexis Cote, announced that he was pushed out of the company after 20 years. Halo Campaign Evolved is announced. It's a full-on remake of Halo Combat Evolved's campaign, which is one of my favorite games ever. There's a lot of discussion out there about how the game looks, how the new mechanics and weapons like sliding and sprinting change the flow of the game, and that there will not be any multiplayer included. I'm not going to completely knock it until I try it, but man, that first Halo game really is just something special. At least this comes with 3 new missions, and it is coming to PS5. Probably one of the more ridiculous stories this year was in Counter-Strike Land. A new update allowed you to trade up lesser value covert weapon skins to a knife, and if those were stat track covert skins, you could receive a stat track knife. TLDR, this broke the economy because the skins essentially became less rare if you already owned them. The Counter-Strike market was said to lose somewhere upwards of $2 billion in just 10 hours. The CEO of Remedy, Tero Vertala, stepped down from the company following a profit warning being issued as FBC Firebreak had weak sales. Amazon laid off over 14,000 employees, including many at Amazon Games and at Twitch. In light of that, their MMO New World announced that development will end, but that the servers will stay online through at least 2026. Also, the Amazon MMO Lord of the Rings was canceled again. Rockstar gets accused of union busting after laying off about 30 employees at the company, whom they say were leaking company information. We're still kind of hearing about this to this day. After 13 long years since its original announcement, we got the official re-announcement for Routine and its release date in December. And last, Tomonobu Itakagi, founder of Team Ninja, who led the reboot of Ninja Gaiden and created Dead or Alive, passed away at age 58. Ha! Grand Theft Auto 6 is delayed again to November 19th, 2026. Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra gets delayed to later in 2026. There are massive Square Enix layoffs across the Western, US, and European offices. Not to mention, Square Enix is one of the so-called leaders of pushing for AI use in the space. They made a claim around the same time of the layoffs that they want to have AI doing QA testing by 2027. Halo announced their last big update for Infinite called Operation Infinite, and I'm gonna be honest, I really enjoyed Halo Infinite. The International Olympic Committee cancels their plans with Saudi Arabia for the officially sanctioned Esports Olympics just a year after announcing them. Seemingly following Japan denying a patent put forth by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, the US Patent Office said that it would be re-examining the summoning characters to fight patent, but it turns out that Nintendo still wins that patent. We get a Japan-focused PlayStation State of Play, which there were a lot of great announcements, namely Elden Ring Night Reign, the Forsaken Hollows DLC is revealed with a release date happening later in December. Valve made some pretty big announcements in November, namely with the new and improved Steam machine said to be 6 times more powerful than the Steam Deck, providing that console-like experience for the big screen while still having the ability to be used as a PC. So yes, I will be buying it on day one. Although we heard earlier in the year that PlayStation's live service push wasn't going smoothly, in November, in the same week, we heard of 2 new live service games from PlayStation that, weirdly enough, would not be coming to PS5. First, the NCSoft Horizon MMO is real and called Steel Frontiers, coming to PC and mobile, and Ratchet & Clank Ranger Rumble, an arena third-person shooter, was announced only coming to mobile. I'm sure there's a lot of licensing and publishing reasons why these are not coming to PS5, but also, why would you be making them then if you're not going to put them on your console? It seems like they're destined to not really take off. Hey, Black Ops 7 released in November, and ooh, yeah, now they're using AI generated art for the calling cards, piss color tint and all. They will simply never ever top the Modern Warfare 2 calling cards. Benny Safdie and Brie Larson are joining the cast of Super Mario Galaxy Movie as Bowser Jr. and Rosalina respectively. Also, this poster is very sick. Another Death Stranding anime series was announced called Isolations, coming to Disney Plus in 2027. The social life Sims like Paralives was delayed to May 2026. Some fans were able to get Concord servers back up and running on PC again, but Sony did DMCA them and it was taken down. Xbox held a partner preview where we got to see new gameplay of the spectacle action game Tides of Annihilation, which was revealed earlier in the year. Vampire Crawlers, a roguelike dungeon crawling deck builder, and the next game from Ponkel following Vampire Survivors was announced. As someone who's been doing absolutely nothing but playing Balatro these past few weeks, I am very excited. And we got a new look at Crowsworn, just waiting to fill that Hollow Knight sized hole in our hearts after beating Silksong. We also get the Game of the Year nominees for the Game Awards: Silksong, Hades 2, Death Stranding 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which all of them do deserve to be there, and you'll never guess who wins. Hytale is saved by its founders, with early access officially coming on January 13th next year. Epic and Unity announced a new partnership bringing Unity games into Unreal Engine Fortnite, and Epic will now be able to tap into Unity's commerce program. Let It Die Inferno was revealed to be developed and containing some in-game assets made with generative AI. A Far Cry TV series was announced to be in development at FX from Noah Hawley of Alien Earth, and Rob McElhenney, or Rob Mack, from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And the Game Award teasers start rolling in. Like a trademark for Control Resonant was filed, and a giant statue is placed in the desert, teased for some announcement at the Game Awards, which we'll hear about in a few seconds. Okay, last month of the year. Are you ready? I'm not. Helldivers 2 announces that with the help of Nix's, the PlayStation-owned PC porting studio, they were able to get the file size down on PC by over 80%, which you can now play in the public beta. A few months ago, before this, they said they had issues lowering the file size because of players without SSDs. WB announced that Netflix has won the bid for the giant media conglomerate, which does include WB Games. However, it was revealed later on that Netflix did not consider WB Games in the value when they made their over $80 billion offer for the company. So who knows where this will go? Maybe the Nemesis system will come back in a too hot to handle mobile game. I don't know. EA reportedly has no plans for another Dead Space game. Tim Kaine, the creator of Fallout, came out of retirement to join Obsidian, but he is not working on New Vegas 2, or so he says. One of my most anticipated indie games, Replaced, finally gets a release date next year of March 12th. The next China Hero Project game being published by Sony was announced, called The Godslayer, which looks like a steampunk-esque Avatar: The Last Airbender open world game. Just a few days after Postal Bullet Paradise was announced, it and the studio were shut down by the publisher after it was quickly noted how much AI was used in the trailer and in the game itself. Sony Interactive announces that it will be publishing Bad Robot Games' first title from director of Left 4 Dead Mike Booth, officially revealed at the Game Awards to be a game called Four Loops. Sony London Studios' Cancel PlayStation game lives on now as Castouts, which looks very similar to what we have seen of the game. It's targeting a 2027 beta. The psychological horror game Horses gets pulled from multiple storefronts due to, at least to my understanding, a potential weird interaction that happens between a character in the game and a character that's also a minor. The boss of Tekken, Katsuhiro Harada, announces that he's leaving Bandai Namco as the game prepares for its 30th anniversary in 2026. A complete Banjo-Kazooie game, Mumbo Mania, releases within PlayStation's game Dreams, which I never thought got the proper attention it deserved. Also, Rare officially approves of it. Remember how I said in September that Take-Two almost saved the Perfect Dark reboot? Well, in December, it was announced that two of the leads of the initiative, the studio behind the Perfect Dark reboot, started a new 2K studio under the Take-Two banner. The Game Awards did happen, and we got a ton of announcements. The next game from Larian is officially announced, Divinity, and yes, that is what the statue in the desert was teasing. The next Control game, Control Resonant, is announced following the trademark being filed just a few weeks prior. Fate of the Old Republic, a spiritual successor to the original Knights of the Old Republic, one of my favorite games, is officially announced by director Casey Hudson, who directed the original KOTOR game and Mass Effect. Also, we're getting a Star Wars Galactic Racer game. Leon is confirmed to be a playable character in Resident Evil 9. I just hope he can do more backflips. Phantom Blade Zero gets a September 2026 release date. Two Tomb Raider games are announced. First, Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis, a remake, is coming in 2026, and Tomb Raider Catalyst is coming in 2027. A new mainline Mega Man game is announced for 2027 called Dual Override. And the last big reveal we get of the night is for Highguard, a new fantasy PvP shooter from developers behind Titanfall and Apex, which, yes, it looks very much Apex and Titanfall coded. I don't have an opinion of the game, but it's launching in a few weeks, so yeah, I'll play it. But it has been getting absolutely dragged since it was revealed. And Clair Obscur Expedition 33 wins pretty much everything at the Game Awards. But not so fast, Clair Obscur. Before we get into anything else, Clair Obscur was a part of the continuous AI usage in games talk, which was a very big point of conversation in December. It all stemmed from an interview with Bloomberg and Larian's head, Sven Vinke. He essentially said that the team, Larian, is using AI in several ways in an exploratory manner, from placeholders, idea sourcing, and that concept artists were using it to gather references, particularly in relation to the just announced Divinity game. Larian was then called out, prompting a response and an AMA announcement so that fans could learn more about how the team is using AI. Following this, Clair Obscur was brought into conversation, and there was a lot of back and forth over if AI was used in development or in the game itself. There was at some point in the game both Unreal Engine marketplace assets that could have been made with AI and pre-2022 AI image generated art used as placeholders in the game. Additionally, other interviews with the team allude to AI being used in development but not reflected in the final game. Due to this, they had their Indie Game of the Year award revoked by the Indie Game Awards, not to be confused with the Game Awards, who then gave it to Blueprints, which then prompted Raw Fury, Blueprints' publisher, to release a statement that it did not feature AI after many were claiming that it did. At the same time, Daniel Vavra of Kingdom Come Deliverance said that everyone in gaming is using AI in development. This conversation is going to continue into 2026 and beyond, and it's not great in my opinion. But hey, a current gen Divinity Original Sin 2 port was released for Switch 2, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. Team Cherry officially announces Hollow Knight Silksong's first DLC in mid-December for 2026 called Sea of Sorrow, and we're also getting a Switch 2 edition of Hollow Knight 1 with quality of life features that you can play now on PC in beta. Call of Duty announced in December that they will no longer be doing back-to-back releases of the same series year over year, so we won't get Modern Warfare 4 and then 5 and then 6 and 7 all back to back. It'll be every other year. Going back to KOTOR news, Aspyr, when they announced KOTOR 2 coming to the Switch a few years ago, also said that it will be porting the restored content mod, which, as the name implies, adds a decent amount of content cut from the game. Long story short, that was canceled because Disney lawyers wanted every modder who worked on the mod to sign off on it. We also learned that Saber Interactive, by at least March of this year, was not only working on the still not yet released KOTOR 1 remake, but a KOTOR 2 remake with the restored content put back in, which I need them both oh so badly. Although it missed the Game Awards, a trademark was filed for an Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag remake rumored to be launching in March. Bungie officially re-announces Marathon for a March 2026 release, showing off some of the new mechanics, art, and environment, and a $40 price tag. Around this time, Bungie and Sony also settle with Anti-Real, the artist who had their artwork stolen for Marathon. The MOBA Battle Royale hybrid Supervive was announced to be shutting down later in 2026. The Horizon-like Light of Motorim was pulled from stores as Sony and Tencent reached a settlement on the game. A financial report showed that Dead Island 3 is slated for a 2028 release. Ark 2 also has gotten delayed to 2028. Terminator Survivors has been pushed out of 2025 and will now be a single-player survival game. Due to a leak, Riot Games was forced to announce major League of Legends updates are coming in 2027. And last, as I was writing the end of this video, I just heard that Vince Zampella, co-creator of Call of Duty behind Titanfall, Respawn, head of Battlefield, sadly died in a car crash in late December. I honestly can't believe it. He was an industry titan and gone way too soon. The whole thing is absolutely wild. We've made it to the end, which is shocking. I spent about 3 days reading and compiling all of my notes and scripts throughout the year to get here, and honestly, I don't know if I'd do it again. But if you liked what you saw or if you want to see more, please let me know what you want to see. I'm all ears. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those fun things, and I'll see you guys next time.